I never anticipated that Sarah's audacious, frankly illegal bridge across my property would be my golden ticket. I mean, who expects their neighbor's power-hungry land grab to become their ultimate victory, their pathway to millions? It's a wild story, and if you've ever dealt with a nightmare HOA, you'll want to hear this. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable true stories. It all started on a seemingly peaceful Tuesday morning. I was sipping my coffee, enjoying the quiet of Willow Creek Estates, when I saw them, strangers in bright yellow vests, measuring across my creek. My heart hammered against my ribs, a mixture of fury and disbelief flooding through me. This was my land, 3 acres of beautiful, wooded paradise that I'd poured 15 years of overtime, shifts, and painstaking savings into. The gentle stream, the secluded privacy, it was the whole reason I'd chosen this spot, despite the notoriously strict HOA. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice trembling slightly as I rushed down the hill towards them. "What exactly do you think you're doing on my property?" One of the workers, a young guy named, glanced up, looking incredibly uncomfortable. "Just following orders, sir. The HOA approved this bridge project last month." "What bridge?" I sputtered, the words catching in my throat. "Nobody asked me anything about a bridge." My tranquil morning had dissolved into a full-blown nightmare in seconds. "You'll need to take that up with Mrs. Winters," he said, gesturing towards a woman in a shockingly bright red blazer standing near my property line. "We're just doing our job." That was Sarah Winters, all right. Her signature pearl necklace gleamed in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the venomous glint in her eyes. With a clipboard in hand, she was issuing commands like a seasoned general, every inch the imperious HOA president she was known to be. She had a reputation, that Sarah for getting her way, no matter who she trampled on. Property deed clutched in my hand, I marched over, my blood pressure steadily climbing. "Sarah, there must be some misunderstanding," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "You can't build anything here without my permission." She barely glanced up, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching in a display of mock surprise. "Oh, David," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The board voted unanimously last month. This connecting bridge will improve community access to the park and raise everyone's property values." The notice was in the newsletter. "I never received any notice," I protested, my voice rising in frustration. "And more importantly, you're building on my land without permission or permits. That's illegal." Sarah's perfectly lined lips curved into a smug, infuriating smile. "Don't be dramatic, David. It's just a small footbridge for the good of the community. Why would you stand in the way of progress?" She paused, letting her words sink in. "Besides, the stream area falls under our easement rights." "No, it absolutely does not," I exclaimed, pulling out my property documents, my hands shaking with barely suppressed rage. "I have the survey right here." But Sarah waved them away dismissively, without even a glance. "We've already allocated the funds. Construction starts tomorrow morning. I'm sure once it's finished, you'll see how lovely it is." My blood boiled as I watched her strut away, her designer heels clicking on the pavement. I glanced around, noticing 3 nearby neighbors quickly avert their gazes. They'd been watching the whole confrontation, their silence speaking volumes. That evening, desperation gnawing at me, I contacted my friend, Amelia, a sharp-as-nails real estate attorney. "They can't just build on your property," she confirmed, her voice filled with righteous indignation after reviewing my documents. "Your deed is crystal clear. You own the land to the north edge of the stream. I'll draft a cease and desist letter immediately." Despite Amelia's swift action, the next morning dawned with the ominous rumble of construction equipment. I stood there, numb with disbelief, photographing everything. The excavator tearing into my protected wetland area, workers hammering posts into my pristine streambed, and Sarah, of course, supervising it all with that infuriatingly smug expression. When I approached the crew with the cease and desist letter, they looked deeply uncomfortable, their eyes shifting away from mine, but they continued working. "We're just following orders," the foreman repeated, his voice flat. By week's end, concrete footings had been poured on both sides of my stream. Each day, more neighbors wandered over, drawn by the spectacle. Some gave me cold, accusing stares, as if I was the villain for objecting to this blatant violation of my rights. I filed a formal complaint with the county zoning office, but the next day, my mailbox was overflowing with angry, anonymous notes. "Stop blocking progress," one read. "Think about others for once," another hissed. It was clear Sarah had orchestrated a whisper campaign, turning the community against me. At the grocery store, families who had once chatted with me now hurried past, their faces averted. At the community pool, parents gathered their children close, shielding them from my presence as if I were contagious. "They're trying to isolate you," Amelia warned, her voice grim. "It's a classic pressure tactic. Don't engage directly. Document everything." And so I did. I installed security cameras around my property, capturing footage of Sarah leading small tours of neighbors along my stream bank, pointing at the half-built bridge with a proprietary air. "The bridge will connect our community like never before," I overheard her telling them, her voice carrying on the breeze. "Imagine walking straight through to the park without that long detour. If only some people weren't so stubborn about sharing." 2 weeks into construction, I noticed something peculiar. New county surveyor marks had appeared overnight, extending well beyond where I'd thought my property line ended. A flicker of hope ignited within me. I re-examined my deed, and a slow realization dawned. Sarah had been working with outdated property maps. I immediately hired my own surveyor, Robert, who confirmed my suspicions. "Your property line extends 12 feet beyond where they're building," he declared, pointing to the freshly poured concrete. "They're actually encroaching far more than they realize." Armed with this crucial information, I marched over to Sarah's house, survey results in hand, my heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. "The bridge isn't just unauthorized, Sarah," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's extending much further onto my property than you think." Sarah's face tightened, her carefully constructed composure momentarily cracking. "Surveys can be interpreted in different ways," she retorted, her voice regaining its steely edge. "The community needs this bridge, and we're building it. Perhaps if you weren't so new here, you'd understand how things work in Willow Creek Estates." "How things work," I repeated, my anger finally breaking through. "You mean ignoring property rights? Ignoring the law?" I kept my voice level, despite the fury bubbling inside me. "The HOA board has already voted. Construction continues tomorrow." And with that, she slammed the door in my face. That night, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this the homeowner fighting the Willow Creek Bridge project?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, that's me," I replied cautiously. "My name is Emily Richardson, County Environmental Inspector. We received your complaint, but there's more you should know. That stream on your property is part of a protected watershed. Any construction requires special permits, which they do not have." I sat up straight, a new strategy forming in my mind. This was bigger than just trespassing. This was about environmental negligence. "Can we meet tomorrow?" I asked, my voice filled with newfound determination. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my yard, I watched workers pouring more concrete near my stream. Little did Sarah know, her precious bridge project was about to face obstacles she'd never anticipated, and I, the stubborn homeowner, now held information that would turn her power play completely upside down. The next morning, I woke to the sound of cheering. Peeking through the blinds, I saw Sarah leading a group of neighbors in hard hats, posing for photos beside the half-built bridge. They were passing around a bottle of champagne at 8 a.m. on my property. "Let's toast to community progress," Sarah proclaimed, her voice carrying across my yard. "Soon, we'll all enjoy easier access to our beautiful park." My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone, recording their brazen trespassing. This wasn't just about a bridge anymore. This was a direct, deliberate challenge. They were celebrating on my land, without permission, drinking alcohol before breakfast like conquering heroes. When I stepped outside, conversations abruptly halted. 20 pairs of eyes turned towards me, a mixture of surprise and hostility in their gazes. "What a lovely surprise," I said calmly, still recording. "I wasn't aware I was hosting a party on my private property this morning." Sarah's smile didn't waver, though a flicker of unease crossed her eyes. "We're having a little bridge-warming celebration, David. You should join us instead of fighting progress. It's for everyone's benefit, after all." "Everyone except the actual property owner, who never gave permission," I replied, counting 6 HOA board members among the group. "I noticed none of you responded to the legal cease and desist letter." Mrs. Johnson, from the corner house, looked decidedly uncomfortable. "Sarah told us this was all handled properly," Mrs. Johnson stammered, "that you were just being difficult." "Did she also mention the county environmental inspector who visited yesterday?" I asked, my voice laced with quiet satisfaction. "This construction violates protected watershed regulations." Sarah's face flushed crimson. "Don't listen to his scare tactics," she snapped. "We have all the necessary permissions." "I've documented everything," I continued, still filming. "The unauthorized construction, the trespassing, today's little champagne party. My attorney will be fascinated." The crowd began dispersing rapidly, leaving Sarah standing alone by her precious bridge foundation, her carefully crafted image crumbling around her. "You're making enemies you can't afford, David," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "This neighborhood has ways of dealing with troublemakers." That afternoon, I found my car tires slashed in my driveway. The security cameras caught nothing, but the message was chillingly clear. I called Amelia immediately, my voice shaking. "They're escalating," I exclaimed. "What can we do to stop this construction faster?" "I've filed for an emergency injunction," she explained, but Sarah called in favors with Judge Harrison, who's delaying our hearing. They're racing to finish before we can legally stop them. The next day, trucks delivered steel bridge beams before sunrise. Workers, their faces grim, bolted them into place while I watched helplessly, waiting for our court date. Sarah drove by twice, smiling and waving each time, a silent taunt that fueled my determination. That evening, an unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside were photos of other problem homeowners who had dared to challenge the HOA. One had moved away after constant harassment. Another, after mysterious water damage to their home, was deemed not covered by insurance. The message was unmistakable: back down or else. Sleep eluded me that night. What if the bridge was completed before our court date? Would a judge actually force them to tear it down? Or would I be stuck with an unauthorized structure on my land, a permanent monument to Sarah's arrogance? The phone rang at 11:30 p.m. "Is this the homeowner fighting the Willow Creek Bridge?" a man's voice asked. "Who's asking?" I replied, my heart pounding. "Thomas Reynolds, Riverside Development. I've been following your situation with interest. That bridge they're building, it might be worth millions to the right buyer." "What are you talking about?" I sat up, my mind racing. "Meet me tomorrow at Oak Street Coffee, 9 a.m. Bring your property documents and survey. You'll want to hear this." The next morning, Thomas slid a folder across the table. "The township has been trying to connect their trail system to your neighborhood park for years," he explained, his eyes gleaming with shrewd calculation. This bridge creates the perfect link if it has legal access rights. I flipped through the documents, stunned. You're saying the HOA accidentally built infrastructure that completes a major trail connection? Precisely. The township would pay handsomely for an easement. But here's the interesting part. Only the property owner can grant those rights, not the HOA. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile spread across my face. So they're building something incredibly valuable, but I control its use? Precisely. And from what my sources tell me, the township has budgeted several million for this connection in next year's Parks Fund. I left that meeting with newfound confidence and a clear strategy. Rather than fighting the bridge directly, I would let them finish, meticulously documenting every single violation along the way. When I returned home, construction had accelerated. 24 workers swarmed over the site, racing to complete the project. Sarah stood with the HOA treasurer, pointing at blueprints, her face a mask of determination. "Good afternoon," I called cheerfully. "The bridge is looking lovely." Sarah's expression shifted from surprise to suspicion. "Had a change of heart, David." "Let's just say I'm seeing the bigger picture now," I replied, my voice light. "By the way, did you get permission from the Army Corps of Engineers? This waterway falls under their jurisdiction." The treasurer paled visibly. "You said that wasn't necessary, Sarah." "It's not," she snapped. "He's bluffing." I shrugged. "Might want to check federal regulations before making that claim. But please, continue building. I'm fascinated to see the finished product." Their confusion at my sudden shift in demeanor was almost comical. As I walked away, I heard Sarah hiss, "Find out what he's planning." Over the next week, I methodically built my case. Emily, from the Environmental Office, provided documentation of watershed violations. The county inspector confirmed no structural permits had been filed. I even discovered Sarah had misrepresented the project to her own board, claiming she had my written permission. The bridge neared completion as our court date approached. Workers installed lighting, railings, and decorative elements. A sign appeared. "Grand opening, Saturday, connecting our community." Friday night, I received a frantic call from Mrs. Johnson. "Sarah's holding an emergency board meeting," she whispered. "She knows something's wrong, but she won't tell us what. She wants us to sign paperwork, transferring liability from the HOA to individual board members. What should I do?" "Don't sign anything," I advised, "and you might want to attend tomorrow's grand opening. It should be quite educational." Saturday morning arrived, blessed with perfect blue skies. Sarah had ordered a ribbon across the bridge entrance and invited local news to cover their community achievement. Neighbors gathered, many looking uncomfortable when they spotted me standing quietly at the edge of the crowd. As Sarah stepped forward with giant ceremonial scissors, a black SUV pulled up. Men and women in official jackets emerged, representatives from the county zoning board, the environmental office, and most importantly, the township manager. Sarah froze mid-speech, the scissors hanging limply in her hands. "What's happening?" someone whispered near me. I smiled as I stepped forward. "I believe we're about to find out who really holds the power over this bridge and what it's actually worth." The certified letter arrived precisely 3 days after the ill-fated HOA meeting. Sarah, true to form, wasted no time. The HOA's legal team, with their expensive suits and even more expensive hourly rates, demanded I cease interfering with community improvements. They claimed I had given implied consent by not physically barricading my property, an absurd notion, of course. They even threatened countersuits for property value diminishment if I dared to pursue legal action. I calmly photographed the letter and sent it to Amelia, who called me back within minutes, her laughter echoing through the phone. "They're scared," she said, her voice brimming with amusement. "This letter is practically an admission of guilt. Implied consent isn't a thing when they trespassed on clearly marked private property. We have your no trespassing signs on file, your cease and desist notices, your police reports. We've got them cornered. So what's our next move? I asked, feeling a surge of confidence. Let me file our response, Amelia said, her voice turning serious. Then we wait. They'll come to you. Amelia was, as always, spot on. That evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sarah standing on my porch, alone for once. Her usual air of unshakable confidence was noticeably diminished. I noticed dark circles under her eyes, a testament to the stress she was undoubtedly under. "May I come in?" she asked, attempting to sound authoritative, but her voice wavered slightly. I stepped aside, leading her to my kitchen table. I offered her coffee, which she declined with a curt shake of her head. "The HOA board has considered your situation," she began, as if she were doing me a favor. "We understand there's been some confusion about the bridge project." "No confusion on my part," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "You built on my land without permission. That's trespassing and property damage, plain and simple." She flinched, but pressed on. "We can work something out," she said, her voice taking on a pleading tone I'd never heard from her before. "The HOA will purchase an easement for a reasonable fee. We've prepared an offer." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a contract offering a paltry $25,000 for permanent easement rights to my property, including the bridge and surrounding access paths. "Define reasonable?" I replied, closing the folder without signing, my expression carefully neutral. Sarah's jaw tightened. "That's more than fair, David. The bridge benefits your property too. It increases your land value." "Funny you should mention land value," I said, a slight smile playing on my lips. "I've had 3 different appraisers out this week. Do you know what they valued my property at, with the new connecting point you've so graciously created?" She didn't answer, but her fingers tightened around her purse strap, the knuckles turning white. "Much more than 25,000, I continued, letting the words hang in the air. "Try adding a few zeros." "That's absurd," she exclaimed, her voice rising in indignation. "No easement is worth millions." "Pine Valley Township seems to disagree," I replied calmly. "They've been trying to connect their trail system to our park for years. Your bridge, quite unexpectedly, makes that possible." Sarah's face flushed a deep crimson. "We won't be extorted," she declared, reverting to her imperious tone. "That's our final offer. Otherwise, we'll contest any sale and tie you up in court for years." "You built on protected wetlands without permits," I reminded her, my voice still infuriatingly calm. "Environmental protection agencies tend to take that sort of thing very seriously. Are you prepared for those fines while we're all tied up in court?" Her confidence, for the first time, seemed to truly falter. You started this, Sarah, not me," I said, my gaze unwavering. As she gathered her purse to leave, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Daniel Cooper, the Pine Valley Township manager. Sarah saw the name flash on my screen, and her eyes widened in alarm. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, stepping into the living room, making sure she could overhear my end of the conversation. "We've increased our offer, David," Daniel said without preamble. "The council voted unanimously tonight. $7 million for your property and all access rights. We want to create a public nature corridor connecting our communities." "I'll consider it," I replied, loud enough for Sarah to hear every word. "Send over the paperwork." When I returned to the kitchen, Sarah stood rigid by the door, her face ashen. "7 million, she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's impossible." "You created quite a valuable connection point," I said, a hint of triumph in my voice. "Just not valuable to you." Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob. "This isn't over," she muttered. "The HOA won't allow you to sell to outsiders without approval. Check your bylaws again, Sarah, I suggested, a touch of smugness creeping into my tone. There's nothing preventing property sales to municipal governments, your own rules. After Sarah left, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the HOA's pathetically inadequate offer. My phone buzzed with texts from neighbors who'd heard rumors about the township's interest. Some expressed support, others concern about outsiders taking over. Eleanor, from 2 doors down, sent a surprisingly conciliatory message. Whatever you decide, David, some of us understand. Sarah went too far this time. The next morning, flyers appeared on every door in the neighborhood, except mine, of course. Emergency HOA meeting, threat to community integrity, all must attend. I smiled as I photographed one. Amelia had warned me this would happen. They'll try to rally the community against you, she'd said. Don't engage. Let them dig their hole deeper. That afternoon, county environmental officials arrived at the bridge site, responding to an anonymous tip. Thank you, Emily. They posted stop work orders and began taking samples and photographs. Construction workers packed up their equipment, looking confused and annoyed. My doorbell rang again as the officials were leaving. A reporter from the local newspaper, Jessica, stood on my porch, a photographer in tow. Mr. Reynolds gave me your contact information, she explained. We're doing a story on development disputes and environmental protection. He mentioned your situation might be newsworthy. I invited her in. As we talked, I showed her my meticulously organized documentation. Property surveys, no trespassing signs, cease and desist letters, environmental reports about the protected wetlands, the whole damning story. So, the HOA began building without your permission, without permits, on protected land. And now, a neighboring township wants to purchase your property for a public nature corridor? She clarified, taking notes rapidly. That's correct, I confirmed. And how has the HOA responded to this development? They've offered me $25,000 for what the township values at $7 million, I said, allowing myself a small smile, and threatened legal action if I don't accept. The reporter's eyebrows rose. May I quote you on that? Absolutely. As she was leaving, Sarah's car screeched to a halt in front of my house. She jumped out, her face contorted with rage. When she spotted the reporter, she charged up my walkway, her voice shrill. What lies are you spreading now? The reporter turned, notepad ready, her eyes gleaming with journalistic anticipation. Mrs. Winters, perfect timing. I'd love to get the HOA's perspective on building the bridge without environmental permits. Our readers are very concerned about wetland protection. Sarah froze mid-step, suddenly aware of being on record. No comment, she muttered, retreating to her car, her carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes. The news story ran the next day, a glorious exposé titled HOA Bridge Project Halted, Environmental Concerns and Property Rights Clash. The article detailed the unpermitted construction on protected wetlands and prominently mentioned Pine Valley Township's interest in creating a public nature corridor. By afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Neighbors, other developers, environmental groups, and even Sarah's husband all wanted to talk. I let everything go to voicemail except one call from the Pine Valley Township Council, confirming they'd scheduled a public meeting to discuss the potential purchase. What Sarah didn't know was that I'd already spoken with my attorney about donating part of the land as a conservation easement. This would give me a substantial tax benefit while ensuring the wetlands remained protected forever, precisely what I had wanted all along. The township's plan would preserve the natural beauty while creating public access, a win-win for everyone. As evening fell, I watched from my window as cars filled the community center parking lot for Sarah's emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. The newspaper article, the stop work orders, and the township's very public interest had shifted the power dynamic completely. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Sarah's losing it. Board members questioning her decisions. Some suggesting her removal as president. How soon will you decide about selling? I smiled and typed back, soon, very soon. Emergency HOA meeting, tonight at 7. The notice, plastered on every door in the neighborhood except mine, was a testament to Sarah's desperation. Luckily, my neighbor Sam texted me a photo. I wasn't about to miss this showdown. News of the township's $7 million offer had spread like wildfire, turning the once supportive community into a hotbed of anxiety and recrimination. I arrived early and took a seat in the back, observing the scene with a mixture of detachment and quiet satisfaction. The room buzzed with hushed whispers, all of which abruptly stopped when I walked in. Parents pulled their children closer, as if I were some kind of contagious monster. Sarah stormed in 5 minutes late, her designer heels clicking loudly across the floor. Her face was flushed, her normally perfect hair slightly disheveled. "This meeting will come to order," she snapped, banging her gavel so hard it echoed through the room. "We face a crisis that threatens our entire community." She pointed at me without making eye contact. "This individual is trying to profit from our community bridge. He wants to sell his land to the township for millions while we get nothing." Angry murmurs filled the room. A man I barely recognized stood up. "That's not fair. We paid for that bridge with our money." "Money you never had permission to spend," I called out, my voice calm and clear. Several people turned to stare, their expressions a mixture of anger and confusion. Sarah slammed her gavel again, her face turning a deeper shade of red. "You'll wait your turn." I stood up slowly. "Actually, I think it's my turn now, and I've brought some friends." On cue, the side door opened, and 5 people in official-looking clothes entered. I'd spent weeks building these relationships, cultivating these allies: County Inspector Johnson, Environmental Officer Rivera, Township Planner Davis, Wetland Specialist Wong, and my attorney, Ms. Murphy. "Who are these people?" Sarah demanded, her voice rising in a panicked octave. "The people who actually have authority here," I said, walking to the front of the room, my folder of documents and photos clutched in my hand. "Let me show everyone what's really been happening." I connected my laptop to the projector. The first image appeared, my original property survey, with clear boundary markers. Next came time-stamped photos of the construction beginning without my permission, followed by copies of my cease and desist letters, all ignored, all disregarded. "This isn't a community bridge," I explained, my voice resonating through the silent room. "It's trespassing, pure and simple." The officials each took turns speaking, delivering their carefully prepared blows. Inspector Johnson went first. "No building permits were filed for this structure," he said, holding up the damning paperwork. "That's a direct violation of county code." Officer Rivera showed maps of the protected wetlands, her voice filled with quiet authority. "This construction has disrupted a delicate ecosystem. The fines start at $10,000 per day from the date construction began." Township Planner Davis explained how the bridge, ironically, had accidentally created the perfect connection between trail systems. "We've been trying to create this nature corridor for years," he said. "It would increase property values throughout the entire area by approximately 30%, a significant boost for everyone." With each speaker, Sarah's face grew paler, her carefully constructed facade crumbling further. The board members looked stricken, their expressions shifting from blind loyalty to dawning horror. My neighbors, the same people who had glared at me, whispered behind my back, and left nasty notes in my mailbox, now looked confused, then angry, then utterly terrified as they realized the magnitude of what their HOA, under Sarah's iron-fisted rule, had done. "You can't do this," Sarah finally sputtered, her voice cracking. "We voted. We have meeting minutes." My attorney, Ms. Murphy, stepped forward, her voice sharp and decisive. "Voting to trespass doesn't make it legal, Mrs. Winters." I took the microphone again, feeling a surge of righteous vindication. "I have two offers on the table. The township wants to buy my land for $7 million to create a nature preserve that will benefit everyone. Or I can accept the HOA's insultingly low offer and leave you all responsible for the environmental fines and legal penalties." Sarah's husband, Jack, who rarely spoke at meetings, suddenly stood up. "How much are these fines exactly?" Officer Rivera consulted her notes. "At minimum, $320,000 so far, possibly up to $1.2 million, depending on the ecological damage assessment." A stunned silence fell over the room. The HOA, everyone knew, didn't have that kind of money, which means a special assessment on every homeowner, I pointed out, my voice ringing with clarity, probably around $15,000 per household minimum. The room erupted. Parents who had pulled their kids away from me were now yelling at Sarah. Board members whispered urgently to each other. Someone in the back shouted, "Resign!" Sarah tried to regain control, banging her gavel uselessly. "We need a private board meeting," she shrieked. "Everyone else must leave." Nobody moved. Instead, my neighbor, Eleanor, the same woman who had joined Sarah's bridge-warming trespass party, stood up. Her voice, though trembling slightly, was clear and strong. "Did you ever actually ask permission to build on his land, Sarah?" she asked, her gaze unwavering. Sarah blustered. "It was implied. He didn't stop us soon enough." My attorney held up the time-stamped cease-and-desist letters. "My client acted immediately, Mrs. Winters. Your claims are demonstrably false." Eleanor walked over to me right in front of everyone. "I'm sorry," she said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "We had no idea. We thought you were just being difficult about the details. She never told us. She never got your permission." One by one, neighbors began coming forward, apologizing, asking questions of the officials, their anger shifting from me to the woman who had betrayed their trust. The meeting devolved into small groups, a chaotic mess of accusations and apologies, with Sarah standing alone at her podium, utterly ignored. The HOA board hastily called for a private session in the side room. Through the glass window, I could see them arguing fiercely. Sarah pointed and yelled, her face contorted with rage. Two board members took off their HOA pins and walked out, their expressions grim. I stepped outside for fresh air. The township planner followed me. "We can increase our offer to $7.5 million, he said quietly. "The council is meeting tomorrow. This is exactly what we've been waiting for." I looked back at the chaos in the meeting room, at Sarah's red face as she screamed at the remaining board members, her empire crumbling around her. "Let me sleep on it," I replied. "I think the board might have a new president by morning." My phone rang at 6:15 a.m. the next morning. I fumbled to answer it, still half asleep. "Hello?" I mumbled. "Is this the future millionaire?" It was Thomas, the real estate developer, who'd first opened my eyes to the bridge's hidden potential. "What are you talking about?" I asked, sitting up in bed. "Turn on your local news right now," he said. Channel 8. I grabbed the remote and clicked on the TV. My jaw dropped. There, on screen, was Sarah, being interviewed outside her house. The headline at the bottom read, "HOA President resigns amid bridge scandal." "I acted with the community's best interests at heart," Sarah was saying, her voice shaking slightly. "There was no intentional wrongdoing." The reporter wasn't buying it. Sources say you proceeded without permission from the landowner and without required permits. Is that correct? Sarah's famous pearls seemed to choke her as she tugged at them nervously. No comment. I've said all I need to say. She turned and hurried inside her house, her carefully crafted image shattered. The camera panned to show Eleanor standing nearby. We've elected an interim board, Eleanor explained, her voice calm and resolute. Our first priority is resolving this situation fairly for everyone involved. I turned down the volume and called Eleanor immediately. I didn't know they'd be filming this morning, she said apologetically. Everyone's in shock. 4 board members resigned last night after reviewing the legal implications. What happens now? I asked. We've scheduled an emergency meeting for tonight, she said. The township representatives will be there, Eleanor continued, her voice regaining some of its strength. We want to fix this properly and move forward as a community, a real community this time. That evening, the community center was packed, not just with Willow Creek Estates homeowners, but with people from neighboring areas too. The story had exploded, becoming a local sensation, a cautionary tale of HOA overreach and the unexpected power of one determined homeowner. Township officials sat at a special table near the front, their presence lending an air of official weight to the proceedings. Camera crews from 2 local stations set up in the corners, their lenses focused on the unfolding drama. The new interim HOA president, Ted, a quiet, unassuming man who lived down the street from me, opened the meeting. We're here tonight to right a wrong, he said, his voice firm and clear, and to find the best path forward for everyone. Township Manager Cooper then presented their official plan. My property would become the centerpiece of a 120-acre nature preserve connecting 3 communities. The illegal bridge, the source of all this chaos, would be removed and replaced with a properly engineered structure, slightly downstream, built to code, and with full environmental considerations. The township's final offer, $7.8 million. This is a win for everyone, Cooper explained, his voice resonating through the room. Property values near nature preserves typically increase 20% to 30%. The trails will be maintained by the township, not the HOA, saving you all on dues, and the environmental violations will be addressed as part of the project, mitigating the potential fines. A hand shot up from the back. It was Sarah's husband, Jack. What about the fines? He asked, his voice laced with anxiety. Will homeowners still have to pay? Cooper looked to Environmental Officer Rivera, who stepped forward. If the remediation plan is approved, she said, we're willing to waive the financial penalties, but the HOA must acknowledge the violations and agree to the restoration plan. Ted looked at the other board members, who nodded in unison. We agree, Ted said, his voice strong, and we have a proposal of our own. He unveiled a document titled Willow Creek Estates Governance Reform. The plan included hiring a professional management company instead of relying on volunteer homeowners, creating a transparent approval process for all projects with mandatory homeowner input, and instituting term limits for board positions. We never want something like this to happen again, Ted said firmly, his gaze sweeping across the room. A small commotion at the door drew everyone's attention. Sarah had arrived. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, without her usual armor of designer clothes and unshakable confidence. She took a seat in the very back row, alone. I was called to the front to speak, standing before my neighbors, people who had whispered about me, left nasty notes, slashed my tires, and treated me like a villain. I felt a strange sense of calm. I bought my land for peace and privacy, I began, my voice clear and steady. I never wanted to be at the center of a neighborhood fight. But when my property rights were violated, when I was bullied and threatened, I had to stand up for myself. I looked directly at where Sarah sat, her head bowed. This was never about money. It was about respect and about following the rules we all agreed to when we moved here. The room was silent, the tension palpable. I accept the township's offer, I continued, with one condition. 10% of the sale, that's $780,000, will go into a trust for maintaining the nature trails and for educational programs about wetland preservation. The crowd broke into applause, a spontaneous outpouring of relief and perhaps a little bit of shame. Even Sarah gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. 3 weeks later, I signed the final papers. My 3 acres, along with the infamous ill-conceived bridge, now belonged to the township. My bank account showed a balance I'd never dreamed possible. $720,000 after my donation to the Conservation Trust. On my final day in Willow Creek Estates, I supervised the movers loading the last of my furniture. A small group gathered on the sidewalk, Eleanor, Ted, and several other neighbors. "We brought you something," Eleanor said, handing me a large, carefully wrapped envelope. Inside was a framed copy of the new sign for the nature preserve. Willow Creek Nature Corridor, where community and conservation meet. Below that, in smaller letters, established 2025, made possible by a generous donation from David, my last name. My name on a public park sign. I blinked back unexpected tears, a lump forming in my throat. "We're naming the main trail after you too," Ted added, a shy smile on his face. "It seems fitting." As we talked, a black SUV pulled up. Sarah stepped out, looking uncomfortable but determined. She walked straight to me. "I came to say goodbye," she said stiffly. "Goodbye, Sarah," I replied, my voice neutral. She hesitated, then added, her voice barely above a whisper, "And to say I was wrong. I should have asked permission. I should have followed the rules." It wasn't quite an apology, but from Sarah it was monumental. "We all make mistakes," I said, offering a small, perhaps forgiving smile. "The important thing is learning from them." She nodded once, then walked back to her car without another word. After the movers left, I took one final walk down to the stream. The township's engineers had already begun work, carefully removing the illegal bridge. Soon, a proper one would stand in its place, with educational signs about wetland ecosystems and the importance of responsible development. I thought about how differently this could have ended, with lawsuits dragging on for years, neighbors permanently divided, and no one winning except the lawyers. Instead, a mistake, a colossal act of arrogance and overreach, had been transformed into something beautiful. My quiet, secluded property would now be enjoyed by thousands of people. The neighborhood had better governance, and I had financial freedom I'd never imagined. As I walked back to my car, keys in hand for the last time, I passed Sarah's house. She was in her garden, planting flowers, her ever-present pearls catching the sunlight. Our eyes met briefly. She didn't smile, but she didn't glare either. It was progress. I drove slowly through the neighborhood, remembering how excited I'd been to move here years ago, seeking peace and tranquility. Life takes strange turns. The bridge that was built to walk over me had instead elevated me beyond anything I could have imagined. My new beachfront condo was waiting, bought with cash, no HOA in sight. Sometimes, standing your ground against injustice, even when it seems impossible, can lead to unexpected and extraordinary outcomes. Protecting your rights, even against powerful opposition, can not only bring personal victory, but also create positive change for the wider community. Don't be afraid to fight for what's right, even when you feel like you're standing alone. You might be surprised at the allies you find, and the good that can come from it. What do you think of this outcome? Have you ever faced a similar situation? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.